Nadia Romero had taken the job in Iceland because she needed the money. Her husband, Javier, had passed away 2 years ago from cancer, leaving her with 2 kids and a mountain of medical debt. The life insurance hadn't been enough. The savings had run out, and her job as a graphic designer barely covered the rent in their small apartment in Seattle. So when the opportunity came up to work a 3-month contract for a tourism company in Reykjavik, designing brochures, websites, marketing materials, Nadia took it. The pay was good, really good. Enough to catch up on the bills and maybe, just maybe, start saving again. Her mother had agreed to watch the kids. Sophia was 9 and Lucas was 7. They'd cried when she left, and so had Nadia. But she'd promised them it was only 3 months, 12 weeks. And then she'd be home. "I'm doing this for us," she told them at the airport, kneeling down to hold them both, "so we can have a better life. I love you so much." Now, 6 weeks into the contract, Nadia was starting to regret it. Not the job itself. The work was fine. The people were kind. But the loneliness was crushing. She lived in a small apartment near the harbor, ate dinner alone every night, video called her kids before bed. She'd watch them talk about school, about soccer practice, about things she was missing. And when the call ended, she'd sit in the silence and wonder if the money was really worth it. She hadn't prayed in a long time. Not since Javier died. She'd prayed so hard for him to be healed, begged God to save him, but Javier had died anyway, and Nadia had decided that either God wasn't listening or he didn't care. It was easier not to pray at all. On a Tuesday morning in late September, Nadia woke up to her phone buzzing, multiple notifications, news alerts, messages from her co-workers. She grabbed the phone, squinting at the screen. Breaking: Mount Hekla erupts, evacuation orders issued. Nadia sat up, her heart pounding. Hekla, that was one of Iceland's most active volcanoes, and it was less than 70 miles from Reykjavik. She opened the news app. The headlines were terrifying. Massive eruption at Mount Hekla. Ash cloud spreading rapidly. Authorities warn of toxic gases. Residents urged to stay indoors. Air travel suspended across Iceland. Nadia threw off the covers and ran to the window. The sky was dark. Not the darkness of night. It was only 8 in the morning, but a thick, unnatural darkness. The air outside was filled with ash, falling like black snow. It coated the streets, the cars, the buildings. She grabbed her phone and called her boss. "Nadia, I was just about to call you," he said, his voice tight. "The office is closed. The entire city is on lockdown. Stay inside. Do not go outside. The ash is toxic." "How long will this last?" "We don't know. The eruption is still ongoing. It could be hours. It could be days." Nadia's chest tightened. "What about getting out? Can I leave the city?" "All roads are closed. The airport is shut down. No one is leaving, Nadia. Just stay inside, seal your windows, and wait for updates." The call ended. Nadia stood in her apartment, staring at the window. The ash was falling heavier now, piling up on the ledge. The sky was completely black. It looked like the end of the world. She tried calling her mother. The call went to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. Panic clawed at her chest. She needed to hear her kids' voices. She needed to know they were okay. Finally, on the 3rd try, her mother answered. "Nadia?" "Mom, thank God. Are the kids okay?" "They're fine, honey." "They're at school. What's wrong? You sound upset." "There's a volcano. It erupted. I'm stuck here. I don't know when I'll be able to get home." "Oh, sweetie, I saw it on the news. Are you safe?" "I think so. They're telling us to stay inside. But Mom, I'm scared. What if this gets worse? What if I can't get back to them?" "You'll get back to them. You will. Just stay safe, okay? We're praying for you." Nadia's throat tightened. "Okay." She hung up and sat down on the couch, her hands shaking. Hours passed. Nadia watched the news, refreshing her phone constantly. The eruption wasn't slowing down. The ash cloud was spreading, covering the entire southern region of Iceland. Authorities were urging people to stay indoors, to avoid breathing the air, to conserve supplies. By evening, the power went out. Nadia sat in the darkness, the only light coming from her phone. She had 73% battery. She turned the brightness down, trying to conserve it. The apartment was cold. The heat had gone out with the power. She wrapped herself in a blanket and sat by the window, staring out at the black sky. She thought about Javier, about the night he died. She'd been sitting next to his hospital bed, holding his hand, watching him take his last breaths. She'd begged God to let him stay, just a little longer, just long enough to see the kids grow up. But God hadn't answered. And now, sitting in the darkness, Nadia wondered if God was even there at all. By the next morning, the ash was still falling. Nadia's phone was down to 42%. She'd turned it off to save battery, only checking it every few hours for updates. The news wasn't good. The eruption was intensifying. Scientists were saying it could last for weeks. The ash cloud was spreading across Europe, grounding flights, disrupting travel. Nadia was trapped. She tried to stay calm. She rationed the food in her fridge. She drank water sparingly. She tried to read, to distract herself, but the fear was suffocating. What if she never got home? What if something happened to her here, and her kids grew up without a mother? She thought about Sophia and Lucas, about their faces when she'd left, the way they'd clung to her, crying, begging her not to go. "I should have stayed," she whispered to the empty room. "I should have stayed with them." On the third day, Nadia woke up to a strange sound, a hissing, low and constant. She sat up, listening. It was coming from outside. She walked to the window and looked out. The ash was still falling, but now there was something else. Smoke, thick grey smoke, rolling through the streets like a fog. It was seeping into buildings through cracks, under doors. Nadia's heart raced. She grabbed her phone and checked the news. Urgent, toxic gas levels rising in Reykjavik. Residents warned of sulfur dioxide poisoning. Her hands shook as she read the article. Sulfur dioxide, a toxic gas released by volcanic eruptions, odorless, invisible, deadly. If it got into her apartment, she'd suffocate. She ran to the front door and checked the seal. She'd stuffed towels under it to keep the ash out, but would it be enough to keep the gas out? She didn't know. She grabbed more towels, blankets, anything she could find, and stuffed them into every crack, every gap around the door and windows. But the hissing was getting louder. Nadia pressed her back against the wall, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She was going to die here, alone, in a foreign country, and her kids would grow up without her. "No," she whispered. "No, please, not like this." She didn't know who she was talking to. She'd stopped believing God was listening a long time ago. But she said it anyway. "Please, if you're there, if you're real, please help me. I can't die here. My kids need me. Please." The hissing stopped. Nadia froze, her breath held. The silence was absolute. She waited 5 seconds, 10, 20, nothing, and then she smelled it. Fresh air, not the acrid, sulfurous smell of volcanic gas, not the metallic tang of ash. Fresh air, like a spring morning, like rain on grass. Nadia looked around, confused. Where was it coming from? She'd sealed every window, every door. And then she saw him, a man, standing in the corner of her living room. Nadia screamed, stumbling backward, her back hitting the wall. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" The man didn't move. He just stood there, calm, his hands at his sides. He looked maybe 35, with dark hair and a face that was both kind and impossibly steady. He wore simple clothes, jeans and a grey shirt, like he'd just walked in off the street. But the door was still sealed, the windows were still shut. "You shouldn't be here," Nadia said, her voice shaking. "The gas, it's toxic. You need to get out." The man smiled gently. "The gas can't hurt me, and it won't hurt you either." "What are you talking about? Who are you?" "You know who I am, Nadia." Her breath caught. "How do you know my name?" "I've always known your name." Nadia stared at him, her mind racing. None of this made sense. The door hadn't opened, the windows were sealed, and yet he was here, standing in her apartment like it was the most natural thing in the world. And then it hit her. "No," she whispered. "You're not. You can't be." "I am," Jesus said quietly. Nadia's knees buckled. She slid down the wall, sitting on the floor, staring at him. "This isn't real. I'm hallucinating. The gas. I'm dying, and I'm hallucinating." "You're not dying, and I'm very real." "Elias, before we continue, comment where you're listening to this story from." "But why?" Nadia's voice broke. "Why are you here? I stopped praying. I stopped believing. I told you I was done. Why would you come now?" Jesus stepped closer and knelt down in front of her, bringing himself to her level. "Because you asked me to. I didn't. You just did. You said, 'If you're there, if you're real, please help me.' And I heard you." Tears streamed down Nadia's face. "But I walked away from you. After Javier died, I blamed you. I hated you. I told you I didn't need you anymore." "I know. So why didn't you leave? Why didn't you give up on me?" Jesus' eyes were full of compassion. "Because that's not who I am. I don't give up on people, even when they give up on me." Nadia sobbed, her body shaking. "I don't understand. Javier prayed. I prayed. We begged you to heal him, and you didn't. You let him die. You let him suffer. How am I supposed to believe you care?" Jesus was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice gentle but firm. "Javier isn't suffering anymore, Nadia. He's with me. He's whole, he's at peace, and he's waiting for you. That doesn't make it easier. I know, and I'm not asking you to pretend it does. I'm just asking you to trust that I was with you. Every moment, every tear, every sleepless night, I was there. I felt your pain. I carried it with you. Then why didn't you stop it?" "Because some battles aren't meant to be won in this life. Some healings happen on the other side. And I know that's hard. I know it feels unfair. But I promise you, Nadia, Javier is not lost. He's found. And one day, you'll see him again." Nadia's chest heaved. She wanted to argue, she wanted to scream, but something in Jesus' voice, in his eyes, made her stop. "What about my kids?" she whispered. "What if I die here? What happens to them?" Jesus reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm, solid, real. "You're not going to die here." "How do you know?" "Because I'm going to get you out." Nadia looked at him, tears streaming. "The gas is everywhere. The eruption is still happening. The roads are closed." "There's no way out," Jesus smiled. "There's always a way with me." He stood, pulling her gently to her feet. Then he walked to the window and placed his hand on the glass. "Look outside," he said. Nadia stepped closer and looked. The smoke was gone, not thinning, gone. The street outside her apartment was clear. The ash was still falling, but the toxic smoke that had been rolling through the city, it wasn't there anymore. "How?" Nadia's voice was barely a whisper. "I pushed it back," Jesus said simply. "For you." He turned to face her. "Get your things, you're leaving. But the roads are open now. Trust me." Nadia didn't understand, but something in his voice made her move. She grabbed her bag, threw in her passport, her phone charger, a few clothes. Her hands were shaking, but she moved quickly. When she turned back, Jesus was standing by the door. "Are you coming with me?" she asked. "I'm already with you. Always. You just don't always see me." He opened the door. The hallway beyond was clear, no smoke, no ash, just clean air. Nadia stepped into the hall, looking back at Jesus. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to. Just go home to your kids, hold them, love them, and don't forget, I'm with you every step." Nadia nodded, tears streaming. "I won't forget." And when she looked back, Jesus was gone. The hallway was empty, but the air was still clean. The smoke was still gone. Nadia ran. She made it to the street. Her taxi was waiting, impossibly, engine running, driver inside. "Airport," she said, climbing in. The driver nodded and pulled away. The roads were clear, no roadblocks, no closures, like a path had been opened just for her. When they reached the airport, flights were boarding. One plane, headed to London, then Seattle. "How?" Nadia asked the gate agent. "I thought all flights were grounded." The agent looked at her, confused. They were, but this one just got clearance 10 minutes ago. "Last seat available." Nadia boarded the plane, her heart pounding. As they took off, she looked out the window. Below, the ash cloud was still spreading, thick and dark. But directly beneath the plane, there was a clear corridor, a path of clean air cutting through the darkness. Nadia pressed her hand to the window and whispered, "Thank you." 16 hours later, she was home. Her mother opened the door, shocked. "Nadia, how did you—" But Nadia didn't answer. He pushed past her into the house where Sophia and Lucas were eating breakfast. They looked up and screamed, "Mom!" Nadia dropped to her knees and they crashed into her, sobbing, holding her tight. "You're home! You're home!" "I'm home," Nadia whispered, tears streaming. "I'm home, and I'm never leaving you again." That night, after the kids were asleep, Nadia sat on the porch and looked up at the stars. "I don't understand why you saved me," she whispered, "but thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me." And in the quiet, she felt it, the warmth, the presence. He was there. He'd always been there, and he always would be. Years later, scientists studied the Mount Hekla eruption. They noted an anomaly, a corridor of clear air that had formed briefly through the ash cloud, allowing one flight to depart Reykjavik before conditions worsened again. Dr. Sven Halldórsson, a volcanologist, published a paper on it. He concluded, "The atmospheric conditions that created this corridor are unexplainable. Further study required." No further study provided answers, but Nadia knew. She kept the news article, framed in her office, and every time she looked at it, she remembered. God had cleared a path just for her. If this story touched you, share it with someone who's trapped, someone who thinks there's no way out, because God is still clearing paths, and He's still saving His children. You're not alone in the smoke, you never were.